Hello, 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 and we are back for part 2 of the Glowing in Tech podcast.
Sponsored by Makers.
We are joined by Keseana Robinson, who was with us in the previous episode where she spoke about her role as a solutions engineer. She spoke more about SalesForce and also about
mentorship and how she used that to her advantage when applying for volunteer positions in leadership.
And today we'll be starting off with
the career challenge. So Keseana, what's a career challenge you faced and how have you overcome that?
Okay, so I think the biggest career challenge as a solution engineer is demoing. So you obviously have to make sure the client is engaged. You have to be moving from screen to screen. Usually you have multiple devices that you're utilizing if it's the multiple device demo. So you want to demo on the phone or the mobile phone sometimes, and you also want to demo on the laptop. So it's kind of just making sure everything's in sync as well. And then you obviously have your click path that you need to be focused on in terms of what you want to show. And naturally, as you're presenting, I find this as well, as I start talking, I kind of forget the point that I wanted to reinforce. So you have to make sure that so what I like to do is just to usually I used to write out very long talk tracks around what I wanted to say, but now I keep really concise bullet points around what is the messaging, what I want to say as well, to make sure that I've reinforced the key points. And then obviously, lastly, when things go wrong. So this could be in terms of clicking a wrong button. It could be that, the Wi-Fi is bad today, wherever you are. So you need to be able to provide a professional demeanor in terms of saying, in terms of being able to show that you're not nervous or you're not panicking in terms of what's happening. But then this is where it's really good. Or one thing I've learned to overcome this is to make sure that you're practicing. So doing dry runs with your colleagues around you as well before the demo, making sure that you have the click path mastered. As well, sometimes when you're afraid of, technical issues, recording your demo. Obviously it doesn't give you the rush like doing it live, but recording your demo to say, if this happens, I can send the customer this, or I can actually record this and kind of pause the video at appropriate moments when I want to talk about what's happening on the screen as well. And I think the biggest thing I will always say is just practice. Like your first demo probably won't be the best demo you have. I think the one thing is you're trying to have a talk track, you're trying to say something, you're trying to make sure you cover all the points, but then you're also trying to be engaging. So you're also trying to say, hello, what you're seeing here is this, what you're seeing here is that, but you don't want to be looking at your talk track because obviously that can kind of mess up the demo and the click path as well. And then being engaging with the customer, so asking questions. A quick trick that I do when something's loading or taking too long, it's a great time to ask questions. It's a great time to ask more about their challenges, ask more about what they're experiencing. Also just stopping and pausing and saying, hello, is everything I've shown you today, is it what you were looking to see? Is there anything else you were looking to see? Like ways you can kind of engage with the client to actually show that they're getting what they wanted out of the demo. But then also it's giving you that time to just breathe. I think sometimes you just need time to breathe. Like I think one thing I used to do was talk really fast. I used to be like, hello, da, da, da. But I think naturally you forget how much it's so important to just breathe and just step back, and then all the thoughts that you have in your brain kind of just come together and align, and then you can kind of just go again as well. So that's one thing I would say is really crucial. That's one thing you learn. Again, you talk fast naturally because you're probably nervous. So as you get more comfortable, then that will help. I think also engaging with people you've engaged with before can help. Like for me, I think I'm a bit of a introvert in terms of, I saw like the ambivert introvert thing that I saw online, but in terms of when I'm around someone I know, I feel like I can kind of calm down when I'm put in an environment with loads of people I don't know, I just get really uncomfortable. So also understanding and recognizing your traits and kind of adapting to that as well is something that's really helpful. And I think the biggest fundamental thing is just taking yourself out your comfort zone. Like I never would have thought I would have been presenting on the Excel. Like especially Amber knows when we used to do our coding challenges, or when we first started our journeys into tech. Like I don't think we ever thought that we'd be at this position. So I think it's really important to just take a step back and but also put yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think a last point I would say is just it's really good to be in a good work environment as well, in terms of how you can succeed. I think having that acknowledgement from your peers or that support from your peers as well can be super helpful. I've been fortunate enough to be in a lovely environment, you know, in a collaborative environment, in a continuous learning environment. But I think, you know, that's something that you really have to take advantage of as well, in terms of like pushing you into different opportunities that you probably wouldn't have had with the people around you.
Definitely. And I think that's something that we, even though we're not in solutions engineer roles and we don't necessarily have to be customer facing, we've done conference talks, workshops for other companies, community talks, and all of that. I like that you mentioned like requiring engagement is like a great way to make sure that not only are you getting the encouragement that you're doing an okay job, but you're making sure that people are switched on, they're paying attention, they're learning something, and taking those breaks to ask if they do understand what you're talking about too.
100%. Yeah, asking questions as well, being inquisitive, like wanting to understand like what's happening, what's your challenge, why is this? Like I think asking those follow-up questions, showing people you're interested, you're aligned, will help towards reaching their goals. And I think people take this for advantage as well. It's just being smiley and positive. Like I think
you are so.
Do you know what I mean? I know.
If you're not watching it on video, like honestly,
I'm so smiley. I know.
So smiley.
I'm so smiley. Okay, so yeah, I think people don't realize like the way humans just naturally communicate. I think people don't realize how like a smile can really help make a difference as well. You know, some people don't like it, but usually people do like it. And I think just giving across like that bubbly personality as well can be super helpful.
So it's like, so sometimes demos go wrong. And so can you talk about a time where a demo hasn't gone as planned and how you felt afterwards, but like how you recovered from that? Like I've definitely had talks I was just like screaming afterwards, like this is the worst talk of my life. Well, like what, like how do you cope when these things go wrong?
Okay, so I think earlier on when a demo, even when I did demos in like the ADA part as well, like I can think of a demo that went really wrong in terms of like nothing works. Like if an AE is listening to this, they know exactly what
what's an AE?
Like an AE is account executive. I keep using those terms. Yeah. So an AE is an account executive, by the way, and they just help with the sales part, but they're more with that direct communication with the customer. Whilst as a sales engineer, you bridge that pathway. So you focus on the technical solution, but also the business challenges. So usually you would use like personas, and they kind of map end users within that particular organization that are experiencing the same problems. And you kind of show in your demo journeys how you can start to alleviate it using some of the software or tech that you have available. So essentially, I had a demo and nothing worked. It was one of those days. And what I did, like I was quite fortunate in that time that I did record a video, so I had something to show them. Because I always like to be prepared. I think it's one of those things you do need to be prepared for.
Yeah.
But then I also think just being honest, like I think sometimes just showing humility with someone and saying,
being vulnerable.
And that's a really good way to actually meet the customer as well in terms of connect with them, because it's kind of like, okay, I'm showing humility. And if you think naturally, like psychologically, how humans are, like most of us don't want to see each other fail. Yeah. You know, and when something does go wrong with someone, like there's that natural like instinct to be like, oh, like, you know what I mean?
Want to hope they have some sense of empathy.
Yeah, it's that natural empathy that you have. Yeah.
And it just like humanizes you, because it's just like, okay, like things go wrong and like, this is a normal part of life. But again, like you were talking about having that psychological safety to feel that you can fail and be that vulnerable in front of a client is even, it's a lot more positive to hear as well. So that's really cool.
100%. So I would say, just to wrap that up, I would say just obviously remain calm. You know, internally you might be panicking. I always say internally I'm probably panicking, but outwardly you want to maintain that calm composure as well. Yeah,
I love it.
Fantastic. So Amber,
that brings me nicely on to my favorite segment. It is What's the Tech Tea? So today Keseana will be sharing her controversial take of the tech industry. And what will that be today?
So my one is just focusing on the instant gratification of our society. And this is based on a statistic that Amber actually shared with me. So Amber said that according to JobSage, it states that 58% of Gen Z respondents expect to be promoted every 18 months. So firstly, who's going to tell them? Secondly, I think this is what aligns with that point on instant gratification, becoming kind of like a norm in our society. Like you see it, you want it. And not to say that's a bad thing, but I think we've forgotten how to just actually love those small wins that we have throughout our career.
Yeah.
And not everything has to lead to a promotion, or everything has to lead to, you know, career development doesn't mean promotion, doesn't mean more money, you know. And I think, especially being someone early in my career, you know, we see it on social media about this person got promoted to this or this person got promoted to that. You know, it's all around looking at other people, and not, I wouldn't say competing, but kind of comparing yourself to other people, where you should really be focusing on yourself. Like, even though right now a promotion might not be on the table for you, like, it's okay, you know, enjoy the ride. You know, I think it's also super important to know where to obviously write down your wins, know where you're being loved or appreciated in your company is obviously very important. You know, if you don't feel appreciated, then, you know, exit or whatever. But if you're enjoying the time, or if you're quite early in my career, and if you're realistic as well, you know, realistic, and actually write down what you've done, what you've achieved, and just enjoy those small wins. Like, for me, a win was, you know, presenting on stage. That was a win, you know. And just, I think, compete with yourself, like, not compete, but just look at yourself and recognize your own talents. And I think this idea of trying to really reach high or reach this or reach that can kind of set a lot of people back in terms of like focusing on what they want to do in their life, which is
it's about the long game as well, isn't it? Because it's not like you could end up burning yourself out by putting yourself under this pressure that you're not necessarily under from your job, but it's like you from comparing yourself to other people who have had completely different journeys. You didn't see how long it took them to get there.
It's like the behind the scenes thing is real, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think if you're not taking the time to recognize those small contributions and smaller wins that you're having, then you will just end up not enjoying what you're doing, because it's not all about the end game, like that outcome.
Yeah. And before I get any haters, obviously seek those promotions.
We're not saying don't get that money.
Don't get promotion, you know. If
we're saying get the money.
Get the money.
But
you know, I think it's just the obvious thing. Like, if your company no longer challenges you, then naturally, you know, that's where you see yourself as going for a higher position or moving companies. But I think also just realize, like, you know, I'm enjoying this. Enjoy those small steps in your journey, those times of personal growth as well, and enjoy the ride, I would say, as well. Yeah.
And I think it also comes from not knowing the norm. So, like, sometimes I'll talk to my mum, and like, she'd be like, I don't know why these Gen Zs think that, like, every 6 months. But it's like, I think like sometimes we need to have conversations about setting realistic expectations and what I should expect. Because I'm the oldest Gen Z, 25. But like, I'm just thinking about the 18-year-olds who must have seen like people just have, like, you know, you see the best parts of people's journeys, and you click on the things that seem most attractive. How do I get promoted in 9 months? Like, they're kind of like easy, clickable things. So you think that that's a norm. Like, if I see one video or like a set of videos about people getting promoted in less than a year and how they're doing that, that's how people are measuring themselves now, rather than having conversations with people who've been in the industry for the decades. You know, there's some people there that have been in like that one company for a few decades, but like for a long time. And just like talking about like how it's hard, because it's like we have different expectations. And sometimes it feels like some advice that we're given is outdated. But I don't think we should write off everything. I still think we should learn from other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a conversation recently with my engineering manager about like, you know, getting into why certain expectations are the ones that I have. And it's like, because I've seen X, Y, Z person do this in this amount of time, and they're like, but that's just not realistic, and that's not representative. Like, what there's what's it called? Title inflation, right? So if somebody's being called a senior, that doesn't necessarily mean that what they're doing day to day is senior responsibilities. It just means that it could just mean that they have that title change in order to retain them. You don't really know like what the difference is between the salaries, if it is reflected in salary at all. So it's making sure that you're considering those things. And also, like, even comparing yourself to yourself can be an unfair comparison.
Girl.
If we compare ourselves to what we were doing in the pandemic, where we were doing multiple talks a week, how many workshops, how many boot camps, like, I can't compete with me back then.
But remember, like, I love to give context. Like, when people ask me about learning how to code, right, and like changing careers, babes, I was in a pandemic. I wasn't sacrificing, like, so it's not like anyone was doing, like, you know, when you're invited out and you kind of want to live your life now, like, no one was doing anything. Like, we were in a lockdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's a complete different ball game. So yeah, wait, what were you just saying? You were saying something quite interesting
About title inflation and seeing someone promoted to a senior after 2 years.
Yeah. So like sometimes like you can see on social media someone's been promoted like to a senior in 2 years. You think that's the benchmark, and you kind of go from this one person or these few people that have done it in that time, but recognizing that like a senior is not a senior everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like leveling system is just so like different depending on what company you're at. But it's also to see that, and like I don't want to say not compare yourself, because I think that comparison is very natural, like it's a human thing to do. So I can't say like don't compare yourself, but I think that it's just like focusing on your own journey and just focus on your own journey, I guess.
Well, just making it a proactive consideration in how you're learning and developing. It doesn't necessarily have to determine what you set as your goal. It could just be like, okay, that is possible. Is that what I want to go for? How is that going to inform how I try to do it? And not necessarily saying I have to do that way.
And that's a good thing. Like, do you even want to be senior in 2 years? What did that person have to do to be senior in 2 years?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, is that a goal that you even want, or do you just want it because someone else has got it and now you think that I need that too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, so it's about like staying in your own lane and slaying in your own lane.
do
you know what I mean? Like you base your goals based on what you intrinsically want, rather than like the external gratification that you'll get if you're able to, because people want the clickbait thing, like how I learned how to code in 3 months and landed a 6-figure job and that's fully remote, that I get like 100k sign-on bonus, like all that fun, but it's, what do you really want?
They're not showing you in the background going
like this person that's been like that got to like tech lead and like whatever, how long, like they're not showing you just like how much they've had to do, and it's not,
and the resources they had at home, the people that supported them, what they were able to do, what they had available in order to be able to make that progression. Like, it's not a level playing field. We're not all starting from the same place.
Ooh, girl, that is that's a good point. That is such a good. Do you know what? Sometimes I forget. Like, we're not all starting from like the same.
No, some of us had to do part-time jobs at uni. We didn't have tutors. Like, there's a lot that like all of that comes into play in the corporate world, and we don't necessarily see it. So it's
because it almost like, so when you're a graduate, you're all technically starting at the same position, but you're not in the same same leveling. That's such a good point. I love that.
So to wrap that up, subjective success basically. I think focus on yourself, and then again, I always say like focusing solely on like the end goal, you kind of miss out on those invaluable experiences you could have, those missed opportunities you could have, just because you want to reach this XYZ, and just not enjoying the journey in terms of developing yourself, is what I would say. And you have to contribute to like this continuous learning environment. You have to put yourself out there. There's just many challenges you go through in your life that are not even work related. Like for me, I'm learning how to drive. That's a big thing.
It's hard.
Thank you.
Look, babes, I'm one of those people. I did it in 3 months.
But can you drive now?
And we'll win.
That's the tea.
That's the tea. That is the real tea.
Oh, God.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Keseana, how can we keep up with what you're doing?
Yep, sure. So LinkedIn, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better on my LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is Keseana Robinson. So you can hear about what I'm doing. You can connect with me as well. If you want to find out more around the solution engineer role, then I'm happy to have discussions. And then in terms of external resources, you can use YouTube. I also wanted to plug a few organizations that specialize in supporting young people. So you have Generation.org. They actually support individuals in employment, get them upskilled. You have white hat apprenticeships. You also have Ada College, which I'm doing and studying my BSc technology degree at as well.
And that will all be in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Keseana.
You're welcome.
All right, if you enjoyed today's episode, then please give us a review on your podcasting platform.
And make sure, if you're on YouTube and viewing our smiley faces in 4K, to give us a like, a comment, and a subscribe. And we'll see you next week.
See you then.
Available on all major podcast platforms.